Hello YouTube, another video for everybody today. I wanted to talk about the Tier 1 Concealed Agis holster. Talk about my EDC setup for my Glock 19, and also talk about the Tau development gadget, Glock Gadget, which I think is quite an interesting piece of equipment that's very helpful for especially appendix carry, and we'll cover a little bit of that in this video. So first things first, let's make sure we're safe. The magazine that's in here does have snap caps in it. There you go there. Nothing in the chamber, so that is good. The spare magazine, nothing in it. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about this setup a little bit. So this Glock 19 Gen 4, few things that I've done just to enhance what it is, and reliability, comfort, all those types of things. Basically customize it. I did do an undercut of the trigger guard. Definitely stable and strong. You can push on this with quite a bit of force and no flexibility, so that's good. But I don't like where it comes up and then you have another one here. I like a nice smooth drop off where it's the trigger guard is still solid. You can still get up underneath it a little bit higher, but I don't like where it has a specific pocket where your finger goes. I like more of that natural feel. And the other thing is I like a very smooth feel on the bottom. I'm not a big fan of the stippled bottom. I don't want any feeling at the top of this hand. I want just to be able to reach around, have the same grip every time, and even if the grip around my hand changes slightly depending on what drills I'm doing or whatever, I don't want to have to feel like I have to go into that pocket. I want complete smooth bottom of the trigger guard. The other thing that I've done is I've done what, I'm not the first to do this of course, but trigger overcut. And the reason I've done an overcut is for trigger drag. So on this particular trigger I like to get down a lot lower. This is the Apex trigger. All I've done is replace the Apex trigger shoe. The trigger bar, all the internals, the springs and everything are all completely factory stock parts from Glock, except for the trigger shoe that I'm showing you here. There is a Vickers extended mag release, and then there is the Apex extractor. Of course, the other thing I've done is sights. But anyway, back to this. We'll check, make sure we're good here. Nothing in the chamber. So when I say trigger drag, is when you go to depress the triggers, I don't want any drag right through here. I want to be able to pull through no matter where my finger ends up on that trigger. So if I am doing a faster drill and I get the trigger up in here, great. If I get the trigger down low, I don't want any drag. Now, I understand when you're training you want to have the same finger position when you get to the trigger, but the fact of the matter is when you're doing drills and you're trying to do things that take you out of your element, you're not going to find that trigger in the same spot every single time. You'll more than likely find the right part of the pad to get to, but up and down you're going to have some differences of where you get to that trigger. So my preference is to eliminate that trigger drag. I don't want any of it there. The other thing that I put on this gun, and we'll talk about this holster a little bit more and appendix carry, safety and some other things with that, is this piece right here. And we'll go ahead and let's check this again, make sure. And we'll drop this slide. So on the back here, this is a Tau development gadget is what they call it. And you'll notice that when the striker comes back, it pushes that up so that you know when the striker is engaging the sear face. So this right here, I'll just push on it. So when you push on that striker, see how it pushes the plate up and it falls back. It sits here freely. So the reason for that, let's put this back together here. The reason for that, so here I am, I'm just on the trigger a little bit to show you. So as I depress the trigger, you'll see that come up. Let me show you another view here, side view. See how it pops out. So the idea behind this is to give you, similar to what a double action revolver would give you, or a double action pistol would give you, where that hammer is coming back and you could feel it. So in the past, and obviously up to current times, people prefer when they holster their gun, whether it's whatever position it's in, is that they can put their thumb over the hammer and have that extra sense of security when they're holstering their firearm. Now, this is important in every position, in my opinion, whether it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, appendix, whatever, but I think it's even amplified a little bit more in appendix carry for obvious reasons, because you're pointing the gun at some very vital places. You want to make sure when you holster that gun that you have a little bit more control of what that gun is doing when it's finding its way back into the holster. Now, I'm a big believer when holstering your firearm that you most definitely want to holster slowly and carefully. You see a lot of videos where guys are, they do their drills or they do their shooting or whatever, and then they slam the gun back in the holster really quickly. They just like that. And I'm not a big fan of that. It makes no sense to me to show how fast you can put your firearm back into your holster. I think you should be very methodical. You should be very intentional, and you should be very slow when you reholster your firearm in any position. Now, the other thing is that in your setup, you definitely want to make sure that if you do have to holster quickly in an emergency or for safety reasons, or you have to have both hands again, whatever it is, you do want a safe system so that that when and if you do have to do that, that it is still safe. So going back to this Tau development, this gadget here, when you put the gun back in the holster, and we'll talk about this holster here in a minute, the idea is to have your thumb over that gadget, and if anything is anywhere even remotely in this trigger guard, you would feel that as the gun is entering its way into the holster. Now, a lot of people say that, well, that gadget's not going to help you because if you're putting the gun back in the holster, it's not going to stop it from doing that. Well, if you go and slam the gun back in the holster, you're right. That's not going to happen. It's not going to help you because the damage is already done. You've already pushed the gun in all the way, and there you go. This is a tool to help you holster the firearm properly. And what I mean by that is, like I said before, is you want to visually check, make sure that there is nothing in the holster. No cords from a jacket, no clothing, maybe a spent casing, whatever could have found its way in there. You want to visually look, make sure that it's totally clear, insert your firearm, having your thumb over the gadget, and slowly click into place. So, the reason I've chosen this holster from Tier 1 Concealed, which is the Agis, is I really like its modularity. Being able to separate the mag carrier from the holster is really an awesome idea. I don't use it that much, but it is nice to have that option. The other obvious reason is this flexibility right here. This allows the holster and the mag carrier to flex around the body and make it very comfortable. I've done a couple of modifications to this, and the reason why is just to adapt to my body type and the way that I prefer to carry it. So one thing is right here, I did add a couple of washers right here so that the mag is in here very, very strong and very stiff. The way that he produces these holsters is there's not really a notch that the mag is fitting into. It's more, if you can see it here, it'll actually twist and pop into place, which I really like because it gives you a very smooth draw and a really smooth insertion of the magazine. So tightening this down as it goes through that twist was the idea behind adding a little bit more space back here. Also, this washer does add a little bit of lateral movement or lateral pressure as it pushes against here, so that also adds a little bit more in retention. The other thing that I've done is on the belt loops here is I've added a little bit more space from the original bushings or rubber inserts. You'll see there's 2 extra ones in there. I'll see if I can get you a little better view there. And then on this side, the reason why is this actually pushes the holster a little bit closer to the body because you've got your belt and your pants here, and if I can put any kind of space from here to here, it aids a little bit in bringing this a little bit closer. So that's why I've added those. The other thing I've done is on the bottom here, you'll notice that there's a special cut that I made that can't even talk, fits specifically to my Glock 19. So right here you'll notice that the Kydex ends right at, on the inside portion, right at the firearm, but I left the outer portion right here for a couple of reasons. First reason is your body, as far as pressure points, the more pressure points that you put against your body, the more that it reacts to it. If you have both of these areas here and here pushing against your body, like when you're sitting or you're in a legs up type position, the more pressure that you're putting against your body reacts and has a different level of comfort as you're pushing in multiple spots. So if you can reduce that and only push in one spot, or push in one spot a little bit less than the other, it makes your body feel a little bit different as far as what's pushing against it. And so the idea is that, sorry, hit the camera here, is that when it's pushing against the body, here's a good view of it, is that it's angled with my body instead of this side pushing in so deep, and it gives that feel and mold that goes right with your body in the sitting position. The other reason, the second reason is that sometimes there's it calls for adjustment to move or adjust your holster. Anytime you have the slide or the barrel exposed and you have to move that holster, there is the chance that you could push up on the slide and actually pop the gun up and out of the holster. I don't like that idea, so again, the reason I've done this is to change the pressure points, but also if I have to adjust that holster, is I can grab right through here and not worry about getting to the firearm because there is that gap right here, which I really like. So another adjustment I've made to this holster is on the claw. This also aids in getting the gun a little bit closer to my body. Right here you'll see these inserts. So that pushes the claw more towards the belt and also pushes the gun more along the contour of my body and body shape. So let's go back to this Tau Gadget, and let's talk about this holster and some more reasons why I've chosen it. So we talked about before, when inserting the gun, is do it carefully and safely, and use this to add another sense of security or another level of security. But let's test that a little bit. So again, this magazine has snap caps in it. safe. The reason I'm putting a full magazine in here is because I want to make sure that the engagement of the sear is at its maximum, and that no matter what, we're basically showing, or I'm showing, that whatever I expose this trigger to with these examples I'm going to show you is that it's at its maximum engagement, or I should say the least amount of engagement that it would have in a resting position where it is cocked and ready to fire. And what I mean by that, I've had other videos of it, is when you insert a full magazine, you do have movement of this slide. So as the full magazine is inserted, it does slightly change your sear engagement from the firing pin to the trigger bar. So that is why the full magazine is in here, and I recommend that if you do any tests like this to make sure your holster is safe, is that you do have a full magazine with safe snap caps or something in there to test that. So as you can see, inserting this, it's very smooth and a very solid click to it. Very good retention. I can shake this really hard and that gun's not going to come out. But the nice thing is that it's very easy to still draw. So it has very good retention. It's very tight, but it's not so difficult to get it out. It's just built very well from an insertion and the draw on this particular holster, the way it's designed. So let's put this back in here, this spare mag, just for so it's all right here in the same position. So you go to insert, and you are going to use the, if you choose to have it, you would have the Gadget, and you go to insert, clicks into place, everything is fine. As you're inserting the gun, as I talked about before, you might have an issue with a shirt or a piece of cloth or something that has gotten into this trigger guard. So again, let's check snap caps and empty chamber. So put this in here, and let's say, just craziness, that you do get a shirt in here. I'm going to put this magazine back in. That's the snap caps again. So we'll put this magazine back in here, and let's say for some strange reason, whatever garment you have on or whatever has gotten into this trigger guard right here, and you've chosen to holster it not knowing that. Of course, as I said before, you should be able to visually inspect and make sure that this is not the case, but this is where inserting slowly and carefully, this is another fail-safe, or not fail-safe, I should say more of a added precaution to make sure that you can add to your safety. So as you're inserting, you'll notice even with pushing all the way in there, I have a little bit of engagement here. A little bit. Now, I would have felt that if I had my thumb on it. Okay? But even with a significant amount of clothing in there, it didn't go off. So let's go a little bit further here. And this is just craziness. Whole bunch of cloth in there. Okay? So we're going and we're pushing in slowly. See how it's coming up? You would see that. You would feel that. Mostly feel it, obviously you wouldn't see it, but for you guys on camera, you can visually see how it is pushing that up, and you would feel it as you're inserting. So I think that the Gadget has some really added benefits for your holster and everyday carry setup for a Glock. Because it does give you that added ability to double check that. A lot of people will say that it's stupid. If you're going to carry a gun, you should be able to check all of that, and you know, you don't need it. It's going to add it's going to make the trigger pull worse. It's going to make it less reliable. Well, I'm telling you now, I've tested this with, I can't tell you how many rounds, in the hundreds, of course, maybe even into 1,000 at this point, and have had no issues with reliability. And I've done some pretty interesting tests where I have put a little bit of pressure against that while firing, just to make sure that if there was a confrontation or an issue where I had to pull through that trigger with pressure against this, that it would go off still, and was successful with that. There is the idea behind this is obviously to feel that that trigger is pulling, but you can put enough pressure against that gadget to prevent the trigger from going back. If you can put more force against this than you are applying here, then yes, you can overcome the trigger, which is part of the safety of it, but it's not going to, it's unlikely, I'm almost going to say impossible, that you couldn't overcome whatever pressure is up against that. The only way that you would run into a situation is if the back of the gun is backed up against something that you can't move, or that you can't overcome with the pressure of the trigger, and I just don't see that happening. Is it? I guess, is it possible? Sure. I'm going to put it up near the impossible range, though. So, my opinion. You guys can argue that all you want. Other tests, as far as doing some, like sand and dirt and things like that, I haven't tested those things with this. I have total confidence that it would pass any of those. Other people have done that for me, so I don't feel I need to do it. If you want to and you want to test it, great. If you want to watch other videos of people testing it, perfect. But I don't feel like I need to test it myself. I have that confidence after the testing I've seen, and I feel 100% confident in this particular piece of equipment to work when I need it to. So that was it. I just wanted to show kind of my setup, the way that I have this put together, what I've done with some adjustments to the holster and to the firearm. I really love this gun. I've got a couple thousand rounds through it, and I bought it used, and it had probably 1,000 rounds before that. So it's probably a 2,500 or 3,000 round gun, which is not a ton, but it's enough to say, hey, that's a pretty reliable piece of equipment that I feel confident in. I enjoy it. I like it. And I hope you guys like this video. Until next time.